So the heroes are venturing into the Feywild and arriving in Hither, the first of 3 realms in Prismeer. But what is Hither? How is the chapter meant to unfold, and how can you ensure that the pacing of the chapter is right and that everything stays challenging, exciting and fun for both the characters and the players? That's what I'll be going over in this video, so if you're interested in that, watch along. My name is Eventyr with Eventyr Games, the adamantine best-selling publisher of DM's resources, including DM's resources for the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. In this video we'll be looking at Hither, which is chapter 2 in the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. In this video I'm not going to go into the various locations and random encounters and downfall and all that. I'll just be giving an overview of Hither, and I'll take a look at the pacing of the chapter, how can we keep it fresh and fun for the players and their characters, and I will also be looking at the characters' motivation and goals and how we can ensure that they don't become frustrated or unsure about what they're supposed to do. First off, I want to give an overview of Hither, and this is actually given fairly well in the book under Navigating Hither, where there is this sort of linear progression that the chapter is supposed to take. It does leave something out, so I'll be filling that in as well. But assuming that you're running through the chapter in the linear fashion that is suggested in the book, it's roughly expected to go as follows. First, the characters arrive in Hither. They'll do so on the Queen's Bridge, this ruined bridge that would ordinarily be able to take them to the Palace of Heart's Desire. As they arrive, they also see a swamp gas balloon crash into the slanty tower, which of course gives them a clue about where they're supposed to go first. When they climb down from the bridge, they'll have an encounter with some Heron-gone brigands, which will attempt to rob them, and they may have a pretty tough for second level characters encounters here, where they will fight these Heron-gone, or they will just end up giving them some of their happiest memories. In any event, this encounter should force Shadow act on Longscarf, which comes in later in the adventure. Afterwards, they can travel to the slanty tower, where they will find Sir Talavar, this small dragon that is kept in a cage and is guarded by some snakes. Assuming that the characters get Sir Talavar's cage down from the tower, they will then have to find a way to open it. So Talavar suggests that they can just go to Jingle Jangle. If the characters follow that advice, they can travel to Tellamy Hill, where they can speak with Jingle Jangle. They can get the key to Sir Talavar's cage, and from then on it's just towards Downfall, where on the way they'll be going to Brigand's Tollway, which is where they can run into Acton Longscarf, this Heron-gone brigand working for Bavlorna, the evil hag. They'll have a fight with Acton Longscarf, most likely because he's going to fight them straight away. So that is one encounter that is most likely to end up as a combat encounter. Dealing with Acton Longscarf, they'll either defeat him, which of course is good for them, and they can head on to Downfall, or they will be defeated and still head on to Downfall, but do so as prisoners waking up in the prison. However thing goes, the characters are supposed to find a way to get into Bavlorna's cottage, where they can either strike a bargain with her, or they can end up trying to steal from her instead. They will either have to steal Clapperclaw, who is a guide's head, or the lost things that Bavlorna has taken from one or more of them, or of course bargain for these things instead by performing various tasks for the hag. In the end, they're supposed to have found a guide and also either steal or be gifted a swamp gas balloon, which they can then take and fly on to Hither, which is the next realm they're supposed to go to. So that is the grand overview of the chapter. There is of course some variations or some changes that I would make to the chapter and that I have made when running it, but that is something I'll go over in a future video where I'll be looking closer at the locations and encounters in Hither. For now I want to talk a bit about the pacing of the chapter. When I say pacing, I mean how we can make sure that each adventuring day and each session of play is interesting and offers different stuff from each of the 3 pillars of D&D, and that is of course combat, social encounters and exploration. We also want to make sure that each adventuring day, and that is the period between long rests, is sufficiently challenging without being overpowering. So we don't want to stuff too many combat encounters in between long rests, and we also don't want to have the characters just take a long rest after each little encounter they step into. Now, the Wild Beyond the Witchlight brags about not having that many combat encounters, or that every combat encounter can be avoided. That's not entirely true, I think, in Chapter 2 Hither, where Acton Longscarf, as mentioned, is likely to go ahead and try and fight the characters. There's a decent chance the characters will fight the Heron-gone brigands as well. And then there is, of course, the snakes that are waiting at the bottom of the slanted tower, which are also decently likely to become a combat encounter. Beyond those, any other encounters is up to you as for which random encounters you choose to put in front of the characters. But even just assuming that they only have these 3 encounters, those would be very tough for second level characters to handle in a single adventuring day, and even just 2 of them could be a decent challenge for the characters. So it seems most likely they will be having 1 or maybe 2 long rests to get the right pacing or the right amount of challenge in each adventuring day. So I suggest putting in a long rest either just before the characters get to Brigand's Tollway if they've already faced both the snakes and the brigands and are pretty low on their resources, or immediately after dealing with Acton Longscarf at the Brigand's Tollway. We get a pretty good tool for determining when the characters should long rest. Not only is of course traveling distance and all that is more or less up to us, we're the only one with a map we know, and we can just say it takes X hours to go there, you still have a few hours before you need to rest and so on if we don't want the characters to rest yet. And when we do want the characters to rest, we can have the inn at the end of the road, which is a random encounter that's described in the book, simply show up and offer a place to rest, which is also a good indicator for the characters and the players that, alright, it's time to take a long rest, we'll be going into something more challenging in just a little while. So yeah, that's the sort of pacing that we want, and it's good to remember that the chapter does provide these random encounters, some of which are semi-combat encounters or could at least quickly become combat encounters, and we can use these to pad out an adventuring day if the characters are trying to take a long rest a bit too early for our taste. They haven't really been challenged. Throwing in that combat encounter or an encounter that at least offers combat is a good way to ensure that it doesn't become too easy or not challenging at all. As mentioned in a previous video, I also think that the way the Wild Beyond the Witchlight would have you level up the characters is a bit janky. It says that they should level up when they first meet a hag and when they first enter a new realm, which is very likely to happen in quite quick succession right after each other. So what I suggest instead is that the characters get to level up to level 3 at the first long rest they take in Hither. That is of course a bit short after just getting level 2 back in the Witchlight Carnival. But yeah, there's not a whole lot to do about that because the adventure is pretty short. It's likely that the characters won't spend more than a few sessions in Hither, and we need to get them leveled up for some of the challenges that are going to come up ahead. Lastly, I want to talk a bit about motivation and information. This is something that is pretty good in the Wild Beyond the Witchlight overall. The characters should be reasonably motivated. They've either come to find some of their lost things that have been stolen from them by the hags, or they've come on the Warlock's quest and try to find out what's happened to Sibylna and free her or find her, or at least help her in some way. They may even know that they are looking for the Palace of the Heart's Desire. They may have picked up on Mr. Light mentioning a alicorn, which is a unicorn horn, right before they got to Hither. Or if they have the lost things hooked, they may know if they spoke to the horses at the unicorn, at the carousel in the carnival, they may know which hags have their lost things, or they may at least know that the hags do have them, so they're looking for hags. But regardless of all that, the characters probably don't arrive in Hither with an express goal to get to Tither. That would only be if one of them has a lost thing and they know that that lost thing is with Scabatha in Tither. But we as the DM know that the purpose of the chapter, beyond them of course having fun and traveling around, is that they are supposed to find a guide and a means of transportation and then get to Tither, which is where the adventure will continue on. So in order for us to let the characters know that this is their goal, we can have NPCs sort of clue them into that. If they're looking for lost things, they can mention that, oh yeah, that's probably something the hags have. If the characters are asking about what's happened to Sibylna and where's the Palace of Heart's Desire, NPCs they meet, whether that's Jingle Jangle or Sir Talavar or someone else, can be like, probably the hags would know that, it's likely they're involved, nobody can go to the Palace of Heart's Desire except the three sisters and so on. So the characters get the sense, okay, we need to go to Downfall, which is where we can find Bavlorna, and then we can move on from there. And of course they will either be tasked by Bavlorna to go to Tither and steal from her sister, or they will figure out, okay, Bavlorna didn't know what we wanted to know, or couldn't help us, or wouldn't help us, or didn't have all of the lost things that we're looking for, so we have to move on, and we found this guide who can take us on to the next realm. So yeah, overall, we just want to make sure that the characters and the players don't get frustrated and unsure about what to do, and the way we do that is to keep pointing them on towards first Downfall, where they can find Bavlorna, and then from Downfall, of course, to Hither, where they are supposed to go. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on the overview of the chapter and the pacing, and how we can keep the characters motivated and give them the information they need to have fun while they're in Hither. In the next video, we'll be diving into the random encounters, and depending on how long that takes, we'll also be looking at the locations in Hither and offering some advice on how to run them, how to maybe adjust them and make them more enjoyable for both you and your players, and of course make them easier to run and prepare for. If you want to get all this in written form and a bit extra, including handouts and maps that you can use to run encounters in Hither, you can check out the DM's resources for the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. There'll be a link to those in the description down below. So yeah, that's the video. Thank you for following along, and I hope that I'll see you in the next one.